Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you a recent reads video. It has been a week since I last checked in with you guys. I managed to read a total of 6 books over this past week, which is a lot better than the previous week, but I've only read 8 books so far this month, and it is the 14th today when I'm filming this, so definitely a slower kind of reading month so far, which is fine, but hopefully things pick up a little bit in the second half of the month. But let's jump straight in and talk about the 6 books that I did manage to complete over this past week. So the first book I have to talk to you guys about is If You Dare by A.R. Torr. This is the 3rd book in the Deanna Madden trilogy. Obviously I can't talk to you guys too much about what this particular book is about, but if you haven't heard of it, the first book follows a character named Deanna Madden, who is a girl in her early 20s who is secluded in her apartment. She has murderous tendencies, and she has kind of purposefully, in order to avoid murdering people, taken herself out of society and locked herself away in her apartment. She never leaves. She gets everything like delivered to her. She does like cam work online for money, and that's how she like makes her living. And she, at the start of the novel, starts camming, like has a few interactions like online with this guy who likes her to dress up like as kind of like a young girl and call her by a particular name. A little later on, a little girl by that same name goes missing, and she thinks that this customer of hers is involved in this little girl's disappearance, and maybe she's gonna have to leave her apartment to like sort stuff out. That's basically the gist of what the first book is about. This is the 3rd book. I haven't, if you've seen my last recent reads video, you know I haven't been loving these books. They're just kind of okay for me. I had a big beef with this one because as I picked this up, I read the synopsis on the back. Don't read the synopsis. The synopsis is, it's one of my biggest bookish pet peeves. The stuff that happens in the synopsis does not happen until like 2/3 of the way through this book. And then when it does happen, it's such a small part of the actual like events of the book. So I found that incredibly frustrating. I don't buy into this series. Everything's too, oh, okay, so now this is happening? Like, because of course, like, that would happen. Like, it's all too, like, convenient and, like, a bit too ridiculous in some ways. I also found the ending of this too open-ended. So when you read the author's note at the end, it seems that the author basically left a lot of this open because she's thinking about maybe in future writing more books. I find that incredibly frustrating as a reader. If you have no firm plans to continue on with a series, you need to try wrap everything up. There are a lot, I'm not saying everything has to be tied up with like a nice neat little bow. I don't need to know that she married this person and had 5 kids with them whose names were this, this, and this, and all of that. I don't need to know any of that. But all of the threads, like there are so many, like kind of, there's a few side characters, you just don't really find out what happens to them. And it's just left very open, which like I said, I find it frustrating when you've read 3 books and there's no like definite that you're going to have any further books to tie up those loose ends. And then this book doesn't do it. So I just found it pretty frustrating, and I ended up only giving this one 2.75 stars. I then read Her Closest Friend by Claire Boyd. This is a book that I received a digital copy in exchange for an honest review from NetGalley. This is a thriller. It's basically about 2 women who are friends, and one of them is starting to go through kind of a tough time. She's having problems in her marriage. Her marriage is kind of starting to break down, and so she's starting to rely quite heavily on the other friend, and there's a lot kind of alluded to that she knows that this friend will support her in like her time of need because she knows like this kind of secret about something that's gone on in their past. So that's kind of the main gist of this. I'm going to be perfectly honest that I don't think that this is a thriller that many people will like. I did quite enjoy it because it kind of speaks to a lot of things that I really like, but I recognize that this is a very kind of slow book For a thriller, it's much more character focused than plot focused. I did read one review on Goodreads after I finished it that talked about like the huge amount of twists and turns in the plot, and I was like, say what now? Because there are basically no twists and turns in the plot as far as I could tell. Everything that happens isn't shocking, and not in the way that I'm like, it's easy to tell. Like, it didn't seem like it was supposed to be shocking. The main thing that I really liked about this book is those friendship themes. I've talked about a lot on this channel how friendship themes, and particularly toxic friendships, is one of my favorite things to read about, and this book has it in spades. And I thought that it was done so well. You really see how someone could stay in like a really toxic friendship, and how, especially if you've been friends for a long time, and even though you kind of know that some of the things that they're doing aren't necessarily okay, that then you can have one really good day together and it's really nostalgic and you remember all the good times that you had, or even in a way they purposely guilt you at sometimes, and you just end up falling back into old ways. And it's really hard to separate yourself from a friend, even when you know that that friend is not necessarily good for you. I just thought it was really, really well done. Like I said, in terms of it being a thriller, it's like I say, it's not super shocking. It's not got a lot going on in terms of the plot, really. But like I said, all of that friendship themes in there, like, to me, was really well done. I wasn't sure how I felt about the ending at first, but the more it's kind of sat with me, the more I'm like, no, I think I really did enjoy that ending. Like I said, I only gave it 3.5 stars because, like I said, I did really enjoy it. But like I said, I recognize that for like being a thriller, it's not necessarily the most thrilling book, if you know what I mean. But I said I did really enjoy it. So like I said, if you're happy with reading kind of a slower, character-focused, toxic friendship, then maybe check this out. If you're looking for something that's really fast-paced, lots of twists and turns, then this just isn't the thriller for you. So that's my advice on that one. I then finished the audiobook that I had started the previous week of Someone Like Me by M.R. Carey. This is an adult horror thriller. It basically follows, we've got 2 points of view. So we're following a woman who at the start of the novel, she's been in an abusive marriage. But prior to the novel, she's gotten out of this marriage. She's separated from her husband. They're divorcing or are divorced. I can't remember if they're in the process of divorcing or if they're already divorced. But her husband returns from like a visitation with the kids, and there's an physical altercation, and her husband's basically tried to kill her, and she has kind of a moment of like, not blacking out, but almost going into like another place, and like attacks back her husband and manages to like hurt him. And it gets broken up by like some neighbors, and she's not sure, she's a very like kind of a meek, mild-mannered woman, and she's not sure where this violent streak of her fighting back came from. And then we're also following a teenage girl who, when she was a child, we learn that she was kidnapped and held like captive for a while as a child. She's got a lot of kind of post-traumatic stress from that, as you can imagine, and she has an imaginary friend that's takes the form of like a fox type creature who's kind of like her protector. Like, she sees this imaginary friend as kind of like a protector of her, and so the book kind of deals with this kind of alter ego type of thing. I really liked this. This has got pretty low average rating. I think it's got like a 3.6, so I assume a lot of people didn't like this. I did really like this. Particularly around, I'm not going to go into like any like spoilers, but particularly around the way that the alter egos kind of worked, and the way that that kind of all, like when you just like learn and you discover like how that's kind of come to be, and like the way that that kind of works. I thought that was very, very interesting, and I really liked that concept. I also thought that the book overall just had a really like sinister, creepy like vibe that I really enjoyed, and I just generally thought this was like a really fun, creepy, interesting book, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. Like I said, I did really enjoy that book. I then read Under the Neva Sky by Veronica Rossi. This is a YA sci-fi dystopian, kind of. It's set, see, I didn't realize that this was a dystopian at first. I thought it was just sci-fi, but then it seems that other people classify it as dystopian, so I'm not exactly sure. It is set in some kind of world. See, I thought we were like, prior to it, I thought it was like kind of set in space, but it's not, so I guess it is a dystopian. Anyway, it's set in some kind of world where there is now, I think it's called the Reverie, and it's like basically where it's very like technological, like I say, sci-fi kind of base. They wear eyepieces, and that helps them like go into like these different realms. And it's kind of like, in a way, kind of like Ready Player One, in not like the plot's not, but it's like that in terms of that they spend a lot of their time in this like kind of virtual reality called the realms. And that's kind of how it works. And we're following a character, well, we've got 2 points of view, but we're following Arya, who is from the realms, and she, through circumstances, ends up kind of on the outside. And she meets up with a character named Perry, who is a savage, or an outsider, who she sees to be a savage, who is still like living on Earth, but obviously Earth's not the way that it is now, because there's something called the ether, which I'm not exactly clear on what the ether is. It's some kind of like, there's some kind of issue with the sky and the atmosphere, and it causes, and I presume there's been environmental issues, and it causes these big storms, like crazy kind of almost like electrical storms, I imagine it to be, that cause a lot of fires. And so it makes it hard to live because they're losing a lot of farmland, which makes it hard to grow food, and it's very difficult to live on the outside. And like society's definitely not like, we're not living in like houses and cities, it's more like settlements and like tribes and things like that. And Arya and Perry meet up and team up to do some stuff. I'm not going to go too much further into it than that. I did really enjoy this. I really liked that Arya and Perry are very like nuanced, like deep characters. Like they've got a lot of layers to them. I also really liked that, yes, this has romance in it, but it's not super insta-lovey. It's also not the type of story where as soon as the two characters like meet each other, because you do get both of their perspectives in alternating chapters, neither of them is like they meet and then straight away they're like just thinking about the appearance of the other person or noticing how attractive they are and like immediately like attracted. Like there's none of that going on, because they've got other shit to deal with like when they meet. And I really liked that, because that always feels really disingenuous when they're in this really super, I can't remember what book it was. I read this book a while ago where this girl has literally been attacked. It's like a post-apocalyptic, and she's literally just been attacked and almost killed, and this guy comes along and saves her, and literally as she's like, he is like standing over like a body of someone like he's just murdered, well, in like self-defense of like saving her, she's just like, oh, isn't he like so attractive? And I just couldn't help noticing his piercing eyes and great biceps or whatever. Like that's not it exactly. And I was just like, say what now? Like you've literally just been attacked and this guy's just murdered someone, and there's like a dead body on the ground in front of you, and you're just noticing how hot he is. Like, come on. And there's none of that in this. It feels a lot more like kind of authentic, which I did really, really like. Like I say, I really liked the characters. In terms of the world, like I say, I don't think that it was necessarily built up and explained as well as what it could have been, because I was a little bit confused as to exactly, like there's no explanation of how the world got here and like why we're now in this kind of situation with the ether and anything like that. Like it's kind of said that the world has moved into the Reverie and like the pods and like the realms and all of that because they had to like survive, but it's not said kind of like why or anything kind of like that really, or at least that I can recall. I also like that this didn't shy away from the violence. It's not like super gory or anything like that, but it is the type of society where sometimes you have to kill to survive, and it's not shied away from that. That is something that maybe is going to be required and that they have to do, and that there's people who get killed and stuff like that. And I like that as well, because it did feel pretty like authentic. So like I say, I did really enjoy this. I look forward to continuing on with this trilogy. I end up giving this one 4 stars. I then listened on audio to, oh, I should have mentioned, I apologize, that Someone Like Me by Emma Carey was narrated on audio by Robin Miles. I then listened on audio to The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas by John Boyne, which is narrated on audio by Michael Maloney. So this one is a historical fiction about a boy. So we follow a main character named Bruno, who's a 9-year-old boy, and he has a father. His father is a prominent Nazi commandant who ends up taking over like the position of like overseeing Auschwitz. And so Bruno and his sister and his parents move to like Auschwitz, and in the way it's set up in this book, which the author recognizes in the author's note is not exactly authentic, that the house that they live in, like their home, is just outside of kind of the fence of Auschwitz, and he has no friends there and everything, and he ends up making friends with this little boy wearing striped pajamas, who is on the other side of the fence, which obviously we as the reader recognize that he is a prisoner in Auschwitz, but Bruno doesn't understand that. It's just a little boy his age, and you know, they form this friendship, and that's kind of the basis of the story. It's not super long. It's only like, I think I listened to it on audio, but the physical copy is like 240 pages. I did really enjoy this book, let me say that, but I did have some problems with it. I did struggle, I'm going to be honest, in the telling of the story, but I did find the main character a little too naive. At first, I struggled with whether I thought he was too naive for being a 9-year-old, and whether I thought, because his comprehension of what's going on in the war, and like there's things that he can't pronounce properly, like he doesn't understand the word Führer, he says Fury, and like he doesn't understand Auschwitz either, he says out with, and I was just like, to some extent, yes, I believe that, but he just has no idea, like he doesn't seem to be aware that there's like a war going on, or that people are dying. And I know obviously that, particularly with him being the son of like a prominent Nazi, that he wouldn't be feeling as much of the shortages and things as like the layperson during the war. But towards the end, like this book goes right up to kind of the killings in Auschwitz, like, you know, the death in the death camp. And I just think that by that stage of the war, like they would have been noticing at least some like shortages and things like that, because by that stage everyone was feeling it, even the people who were higher up, because it was just things that weren't available, things you couldn't do. And he just was so kind of clueless, and I was like, I just don't believe that a 9-year-old would be this clueless. Like 9 isn't that young. So I was thinking that at first, but then I started to think about my nephew who just turned 10 in July, to turn 10 a couple of months ago, so who was recently 9, and I was thinking, would he understand this? And I thought, actually, maybe he wouldn't. I don't know. I don't know. So I was kind of torn on that, which I think because I was kind of torn on that, I didn't connect to the story quite as much as I think I would have. Having said that, I understand. So having said that, with my issues with his like naivety and whether I thought that he would be that naive, I understand why the author chose to do that, because what the author's really going for is to really show that juxtaposition between kind of this really like the innocence of youth, this really like innocent person, you know, it's just a little boy, despite obviously what maybe his father is and all of that, he's an innocent little boy, and that kind of juxtaposed with this one of the worst atrocities in our history. So I really got what the author was going for. Like I say, I was kind of pulled out of it a little bit, but I did still appreciate it, if that makes sense. I also will say the ending, I did not see coming, which I'm surprised. Like I think it's probably something that I maybe should have seen coming, but I didn't really realize kind of where we were headed. And then when I got to the end, I was like, wow, okay. Like I say, I didn't cry, which I'm normally a pretty easy sell with crying. But like I said, I think I was just slightly emotionally removed in some ways because of some of the issues that I had. But I do recognize that this is a like really good book, I think, and I did like enjoy it. So in the end, I gave it 4 stars. Like I said, I had complicated thoughts about this one. I'm sorry, I've been going on for too long. And then the final book that I read over this past week was The Prisoner of Heaven by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This is the 3rd book in the Cemetery of Forgotten Books series, of which I believe there are 4. When I finished this book, I went into, because I believe at some point I didn't think the 4th book had been translated yet, but I've checked and the 4th book is translated, and I've requested it from my library. Like my library has the English translation, so I've requested that, so hopefully I'll be getting that soon. And the 4th book, when it was originally written in Spanish, because this is translated fiction obviously, was published several years ago, and there's no 5th book, so I'm presuming that the 4th is the final, but I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, so I read this 3rd book. So the 1st book, The Shadow of the Wind, there's then a 2nd book, which is actually kind of a prequel to Shadow of the Wind, and then this book is actually more of a sequel to The Shadow of the Wind. And I actually really enjoyed this one. I enjoyed this one more than I enjoyed the 2nd book, The Angel's Game. It's actually not that long. It's only like just under 280 pages, I believe, so not super long. I do think in terms of its place within the series, like structure, it's maybe a little bit fillery in terms of the series, but it didn't really bother me because I was very enraptured in the story of this one. I think this one was like this one felt extra gothic-y to me, which I love. Gothic vibes in my fiction, I'm so here for. Like I said, I just really enjoyed the story. Very gothic-y. Really end up enjoying this installment. I gave it 4 stars. So that's everything that I completed. In terms of what I'm currently reading, I am currently reading Through the Evernight by Veronica Rossi. This is the second book in the trilogy. I'm actually really far through this. I'm on page 271. I think this has got like 340. Yeah, yeah, 340 pages. So I'm like 70 pages to go, so I'll definitely be finishing this today. Like I said, I can't really talk too much about the plot of this because it's the second book, but I am enjoying my time reading this. So that's what I've read and what I'm currently reading, but I did just want to quickly give an update for the Hogwarts House Battles readathon, which I am participating in. Sorry, I've had really bad hay fever. It's like the second week of spring here and my hay fever is already rearing its ugly head, which is just fantastic. Anyway, so I wanted to give an update for the Hogwarts House Battles readathon. So far, I have read a total of, this month, I've read a total of 3,295 pages, which you get a point for every page that you read. I then have also completed 4 class challenges so far. So I completed the class challenge for Charms, which was to read a new to you book. So that's kind of like very like general. I was like, what counts as like a new to me book? Any book I've never read before? Like, did it have to be one that you just hauled, but then there's a separate prompt like for that? So I was like, I'm not really sure exactly. Like, I guess you could just use pretty much anything. So I ended up using If You Dare by A.R. Torr for this because this is a book that I purchased this year. Most of the books that I read off my physical TBR are books that I have purchased prior to 2019. But I did actually purchase this one this year. So I used that one to fill that prompt. I also completed the prompt for Potions, which is to read from a genre that you wouldn't usually pick up. And for that, I actually used Under the Neva Sky by Veronica Rossi because, like I said, this is classified as sci-fi. Sci-fi is one of my least read genres. And so I decided to use that for that. I then also completed the prompt for Alchemy, which is to read a recommendation from a friend. For that, I used the book that I read last week, The Dark Days Club by Alison Goodman. I first heard about that book and was interested in it because of Aoife over at Fred Weasley Died Laughing. She recommends the trilogy a lot, and I consider Aoife a friend. So I used that one for that prompt. And then the other prompt that I've completed is Apparition, which is to only read a book in public. And so for that, I used Someone Like Me by M.R. Carey, the audiobook, because I only listen to audiobooks on the bus, well, walking to the bus, on the bus, and then at work. Very occasionally, I'll like complete, depending on where I'm up to, I'll like complete chapters once I get home, but I made a concerted effort with this to make sure I didn't listen to any of it once I got home. So I only listened to that in public, so I checked off that. So you get 50 points per class challenge, so I've got 200 points for that. I then did also complete the weekly challenge for week 1, which was a bookish scavenger hunt. There were 8 prompts, I think it was, of books you had to find on your shelves. So I found those and I took a picture of that and I posted it on my Twitter. So you get 150 points for a weekly challenge. So in grand total so far for Hufflepuff, I have earned 3,645 points. Hufflepuff is currently placed second in the House Cup. Gryffindor is currently winning. So come on, Hufflepuff, we need to get some good reading done over the rest of this month to try and take the lead. That's how we're going so far. Like I said, I haven't gotten as much read. Like I feel like 3,000 pages for me is pretty low at this stage of the month, but I don't know. Hopefully I'll get a lot of really good reading done over the next like couple of weeks or so and be able to really up my numbers, and I'm hoping to check off a lot more class challenges to get more bonus points and hopefully maybe do some more weekly challenges as well. So that is kind of where I'm at with the readathon as well. So that's it. That's kind of what I've been reading, what I'm currently reading, how I'm doing on the readathon. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you've read any of these books, if you've got any thoughts. I would love to chat with you guys what you have been reading recently. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye guys.